Oh, you're on mute, Ben. Sorry, you need to unmute yourself. There you
Okay,
go.
hi, sorry. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. So how was your trip back from Miami then? Has it all been a bit crazy since then?
Mm, uh, it haven't been crazy, but it's been a little bit different ever since with sports and balancing all the Bitcoin stuff and social life because it's summer for me. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Did you guys have a good time? I know it's probably a bit overwhelming, but did you enjoy it?
yeah, it was a blast. We got to have so many opportunities and meet so many cool people. It was like a really, really great time just being in the environment of all the other Bitcoiners.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for doing the podcast. I'm really excited about this. So, Beth, you and I had a conversation at Bitcoin Miami, and you were talking about some of the stuff that you wanted to do as a parent to a child who is interested in Bitcoin and somebody that is interested in Bitcoin yourself. So, I was really excited just to kind of chat to you, and I love talking to women in this space and to sort of understand what they're thinking about, what they're doing. So, I don't know if can I hand over to you, Beth, first to introduce
Sure.
yourself, just who you are.
Sure. My name is Beth, and I'm a mom, a single mom, two boys, and I'm a hairstylist. And I just, as I started to learn more and more about Bitcoin, I understood, the significance of it more than just, number go up or, um, a cool investment to make or, it became more important, I would say, the last several years as we've seen society change and rules change and scary things happen and lots of money printing. And it just became important to me because uh, I want, you know, I think I think there's like a slight disconnect kind of in the space where people who got in really early, they have some wealth and some decent assets and everything. So while I was in the beginning of my career, I was making what was considered a really good income. Uh, and, you know, that hasn't changed very much, yet the affordability of just providing basic needs is drastically changed. And so, the viewpoint changes and the whole wealth gap widening becomes drastically more realistic. And then, the limitations on our freedom. Don't yawn, Ben.
Sorry.
You gotta stay awake, bro.
Otis is snoring right now, so loud. I don't know how it's not cutting through. He's literally just sitting on the floor right next to me, just snoring, and all is right next to him.
Oh, is that your dog?
Mhm.
Yeah, one of them. We have two.
We have
We
two
have
as
two.
well, actually. One of ours is a snorer.
Yeah, he's a Frenchie, so like he snores. He doesn't breathe very well. He snores quite a bit. But so yeah, it
Oh,
just became like really important for me as a mom and taking this journey that, you know, kind of taking some control back. You know what I mean? Taking some power back. And even though it's not a lot, it's not considered a huge amount by, OG Bitcoiners or people that are able to um, invest large amounts. It's a little bit of peace of mind. At first it's kind of like, oh my gosh, did I, make a huge mistake? We can't really afford. And then it became, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what the price of Bitcoin is. It allows me freedom from control. You know what I mean? So it allows me the ability to have a safety net and taking care of my kids. It allows me to be able to, or without the need of the banks if they happen to, have a hiccup, if you will, or continue to fail. I have a backup, and that's empowering. regardless of the amount in fiat dollars, right? So that to me became much more important as far as why we Bitcoin.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Ben, do you want to introduce yourself as well, like who you are and what your, obviously we
Yeah.
know your relationship to Beth, but like what your kind of activity is in Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I'm Beth's son, Benjamin, also known as Gen Z for BTC. I recently went to Bitcoin Miami with my mom. I had a great time. So a couple of you guys probably know me from there or have seen me on Twitter with my new account. But yeah, I am a about to be 14-year-old kid living in Florida and a new Bitcoiner with an idea to educate and teach the youth about another option to save us financially for our future. And that's who I am.
Amazing, thank you. So I really wanted to chat to you guys as well about your journey into Bitcoin, because Beth, I'd love to know when you first discovered it, what it was that really intrigued you about it, and then if you could talk a little bit about how Ben got involved in that process.
I mean, I first discovered it almost right after he was born, when it was brand new. I was not a tech person, but you know, back then, kind of, I think I had just made a Gmail email account, and everything was still America Online and everything. So I'm not quite sure how I heard about it. But at the time that I did hear about it, I remember being really, really intrigued and thinking this would be a cool thing to have. And in the little chats and forums that were available, there wasn't like hardly any information available. It kind of came down to, if I was going to buy some, right, I was going to have to take my flip phone or you know, the first smartphone that I had and go meet a stranger at McDonald's with a wad of cash and like hope that they weren't gonna screw me over. And you know, with the newborn, I was like, that's kind of risky. So I just decided not to. And then, you know, it came up again a few years later, and I thought, well, gosh, you know, I'm a new mom. It would be irresponsible to put money towards something that is not a necessity or that we don't need, right? And, you know, then again, a few years later, right, it's back on the radar. It starts to be on the news, you know, the 2017 cycle. And then it's like, well, you're too late, you know, you're too late. And so over the years, I just kept thinking, well, this just keeps coming up to me. And so in 2020, I decided, regardless of all of those things, you know, that it's irresponsible to put money towards something that we don't need. You know, we lived on a strict budget. I was on my own with both kids and paying for daycare and all those other things, and trying really hard to, you know, save up again for a house, which I had owned several houses prior, but you know, life doesn't go the way you plan. So when my ex and I split, you know, everything was start from zero or -0, actually, in a lot of debt. Not what I had planned, because I had been really steadfast about building my own stability prior to having kids and prior to marriage and falling in love. And I had that. So like I had my own home, I had my own business, and still when you join everything with somebody, it gets, you know, complicated. So I finally decided that I would give myself a Christmas present of Bitcoin. So I sat down for Christmas that year, and my present to myself was to learn about it, purchase some, and then started the real rabbit hole of this is gonna, at first, like, this is gonna be it. Like, this is gonna get us out of everything, and this will be okay, and number go up, and I can learn how to trade, and I can buy these altcoins, and I can, you know, all the things that show up in social media first. And that, you know, about gives you a heart attack, right? So someone, you know, in middle class that doesn't have extra, you know, again, I was afraid all the time. And I just continued the journey and learning about what it is, where it came from. I traced it back kind of that time of uncertainty with the financial crisis. I had been unaware at that time of what it really, really meant, because I didn't have a retirement account that got destroyed. I didn't have, you know, the housing crisis. I had made a lot of money on a previous house, sold at the high, and then took that money, bought another house on the high, and invested in my own business. So like there was this whole scary teeter-tottering happening. And I remember all the protests on Wall Street and stuff. And part of me was like, oh my gosh, don't you guys have a job? Like, don't you have something to do? And I didn't understand the significance of it, because it was always just like, you know, politicians get away with everything. Wall Street gets away with everything, like whatever, just, we got to move on. And then learning about kind of all the things that were happening with tech and with the internet. I know some of the stuff that Anonymous was doing at the time was pretty inspiring, you know, giving the internet back to the people of Egypt and taking on Scientology. And, you know, a lot of it was like goofy stuff, but I think that started into motion, you know, understanding the purpose of that and taking down 𝗁𝗲 and trying to keep the internet free was like the start of maybe understanding the freedom aspect of things. And that was probably in the back of my mind as something that helped me to understand Bitcoin a little bit better. I don't know if people remember, but back then, you know, in a very short period of time, the amount of people protesting about that bill that was coming into Congress that was going to, you know, make platforms responsible for what was on their platform, and how the internet wouldn't be free anymore and information wouldn't be free for everybody anymore, and the importance of being able to share that for educational purposes and free speech purposes. And everybody got behind it, and everybody changed their tune, right? Like the policymakers of our country admitted that, like, okay, maybe we need to step back. We don't understand this internet thing. Like, maybe this is more important. Maybe we need to understand this better before we start making laws about it, which kind of come full circle to where we are now with cryptocurrency, right? So, you know, the idea that Google blacked out, and all these, you know, famous websites and storefronts blacked out in support of freedom. And again, kind of like full circle. And then it was maybe to protect themselves from liability, but not necessarily protect the freedom of information, because then we had all this censorship happening. And so all this is in the background of my head and kind of happening live with COVID and everything while I'm in my Bitcoin journey. So that just helped me to understand why it was so much more important than I originally ever thought. You know what I mean? So I just started with, you know, buying my first Bitcoin and learning about how to get it off an exchange, and how to then eventually cold storage, and how to DCA, and how to not trade on leverage, right? And how to not screw myself up and play it safe and be smart. And the more I went down the rabbit hole, the more steadfast and secure I became, in that it doesn't matter to me what the dollar price is, so long as I have some.
Yeah, that's very true. Ben, so you've obviously got into Bitcoin and you've gone very heavy down the rabbit hole. Can you talk about your journey? Like, what was it? When did your interest converge with your mum's interest? And do you remember when you first learned about Bitcoin and what you thought?
Yeah, so I would say my mom probably orange pilled me a little bit, and then I also orange pilled myself some. But it probably started with me just like coming in and out of my room one Christmas break and seeing my mom always watching Bitcoin videos. And she would always tell me, hey, Ben, go watch this video. Hey, Ben, go watch this video. It's pretty cool. I'm not here, but I didn't really care. It was Christmas break. I was playing video games, playing Fortnite or whatever I was playing. And I didn't really listen. But so Christmas break ended and time went on like normal. And then I kept hearing about like little stuff that was happening. My mom kept telling me like one big thing I remember was the Canadian trucking rally event that happened. And then when she told me about how their banks got shut down, it just like blew my mind how they could take away our money, just how we buy things that we need in life like that easily over such a small thing. And that was just one of the little things that set a little like light bulb off in my head. And then I just slowly started to realize that Bitcoin like actually could be something important. And then one night I just watched some documentaries and realized how important Bitcoin is and what purpose it is going to have in the future of holding our wealth and our freedom away from the government or group. That's what probably the freedom aspect is the main part, and the idea that you can have your value out of a fiat currency. Like it sounds simple, but like we really have never had that before of being able to have it in another medium of exchange currency.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Yeah, very true. You probably talk to your friends a lot about Bitcoin. Can you talk about that experience a little bit and like what their response is and you know where you think your generation is on this journey? Because I just have an observation that like the internet really became a thing when I was in my 20s, and it was kind of when it really started to gain traction, and there was a lot of positivity about it. You know, we were at university, we were like in the computer lab on chat rooms and using it. And I feel like there's been so much misinformation and kind of, negative press put out about Bitcoin that I don't see that same thing myself in your generation, where kids are really like understanding Bitcoin and getting excited about it. So I'm really curious about your experience being a Bitcoiner and then obviously talking to your friends at school and so on about this. Like what's been your take on that?
Yeah, that's a very good question because it's very different. One thing I see a lot is kids repeat what they see on TikTok and online. And recently, it's only been bad stuff about Bitcoin because it dumped and people realized they lost money on their investments because people are being told to trade short like 2 or 3 months and try to make a ton of money off of Bitcoin, expecting it to be like Dogecoin or something. And then when they realize it's not, they're like, oh, it sucks and it's stupid. So immediately, most of the time, I'm met with a negative opinion on it, which I understand because that's the only information that's been put out on the stuff that kids look at because kids aren't reading books or watching whole documentaries. They're just watching TikTok and seeing the stuff that people want them to see. So I have to know that is what they're going to think and try to talk them out of that slowly without forcing it because you can't force a kid on what they want to think or what they're going to do. So I've had tons of negative experiences or ones where I don't fully convince them, which is okay because they're still a kid. Because and they're only like 13 or 14, so I'm not even like full teenagers. And then I've also had tons of positive ones. Like the other day, I was at a friend's house and I was talking to a couple of the kids, and at first they were like, "Oh yeah, Bitcoin is not the best one. You could put money in other things that go up more steadily and have a better like curve of rate of return." And wait, I forgot what they said. They were talking about like 504k or
401k, you mean the pension?
401k and like lots of little stuff for S&P 500. And then I'd explain to them that those stocks like S&P 500 don't give you your money's worth most of the time because our dollars are devaluating at the same rate as those stocks are going up because they were like that stock is what is basically what is America. It's taking the top 500 companies of America and is representing the American dollar. And then I was like, yeah, you're right, it is. And then I said, our American dollar is devaluating at the fastest rate it ever happened before. So I had to explain to them, and that really made sense in their head. And then I told them that Bitcoin isn't meant to be a return of like money. It's meant to keep you keep your money from losing value. So even if it goes up and down over a month or two, it's always going to be going up in relation to our dollar because of its set supply and how it's ran around the world and can't be changed. So that's what I was telling them, and that worked most of the time. But sometimes it still
Interesting.
doesn't work. Yeah, that's
What is it that you think they really care about? Because when you talk about them wanting to sort of trade in altcoins and they're interested in number go up, is it the making money aspect that your generation tends to find most interesting, or what's the hook?
yeah. So for any kid, it's gonna first be the making money aspect, especially if that's the first thing they're exposed to. The idea that you can put your money into something and a month later it's a little bit more money. That's the first thing that hooks most kids, which is
Mm.
how it's gonna be for a little bit. Yeah, but I am trying to explain to them that it's only has that because that our dollar is going down. That really it's in a straight line and our dollar is just going down, making it appear that it's going up. So that's what I've been trying to explain to them. But yeah, most kids start off like that because they can buy new shoes with the money, they can buy new stuff.
Right.
So like who wouldn't want an extra $100 in just a month just to buy something?
Yeah. Beth, I mean, do you have any observations on that? Because that's interesting. I think when you're a certain age, you don't have as long a time horizon. You don't think about saving for the future or how you're going to buy a house or that kind of stuff. Do you have any thoughts about that? Because you've obviously been very successful at educating your kids about Bitcoin. Where do you think that parents should start, and like, what do you think some of the challenges are?
I think for me, with Benjamin's character and personality, I always felt that challenging him and critical thinking worked best, right? To get him out of the laziness of just repeating what you hear, I would challenge him when he would tell me something, and I would ask him questions and then challenge him to go look at it again, and that he might come up with a different opinion if he looked into it a little bit more. So rather than just trying to teach him what I believe, I was challenging him to learn or unlearn things that he heard, or at least question everything. So I think that kids, obviously, the easier it is to get what they want, the better. So they're going to be attracted to what is being sold to them, which is leverage trading and altcoins and all this other stuff. But I think that they don't like to be told no, you know? So if you present to them the idea that someone outside of your immediate family, your bank, your credit card, your future boss, the dollars that you earn, that the value of those things do not get to be decided by you, right? And so the very basic point of wanting to succeed is that you try your best. You know, the American dream, you work as hard as you can and you can go anywhere with it. And now we're at a stage where, that's not necessarily true anymore. And so that's someone else deciding the value of your time and your effort and your work, right? So the whole proof of work and it kind of comes back around, and it backs up the whole Bitcoin ethos, right? Like, don't trust, verify. So don't just trust what you heard, go verify it, right? And open up your mind to that there might be a bigger picture. That happened a lot in discussing everything that happened with COVID, after COVID, all the protests, the politics, the election, the hatred that everybody was having, the just vitriol that was coming out of people's mouths and even kids' mouths. It was uncomfortable for him at school because it sounded so over the top or so like pointed and so negative that, like, what's the likelihood of something so emotional being actually true? Why don't we take a step back and look at this, right? And so I think teaching kids critical thinking is the answer to getting them to understand the bigger world around the safe bubble that they live in. And that's, I think, what got him to understand also, was just seeing the bigger picture. And also, like, we're very lucky, we have a roof over our head. We live in a relatively safe area. He's at a safe school. And I remind myself of those things all the time. And I remind him of those things all the time. But, he's not fed with a silver spoon either. So he does see kind of like both sides of that divide, where we don't have enough for this that all your friends want to go to and we can't go. But we have enough for this, which other people don't. And so we're in this unique middle where you're kind of teetering on the edge of, are we going to be okay or not? And we got to work hard to make sure that we are. And then we're going to protect ourselves from someone else deciding what we want. That's it's not the American dream.
Yeah, no, that's I hear you. That's fantastic as well, because I feel like, your kids are getting a very realistic, grounded education in money and in life that is not always the case. So kudos to you. I would love to hear about your whole journey to Miami, because you had reached out to Greg Foss, who's a very prominent Canadian Bitcoiner, before going to Miami, and I think you'd asked him if it was okay to bring kids, and this kind of resulted in a whole fascinating journey that you guys had down to the conference, and you met a ton of really big name Bitcoiners and got lots of exposure. So I'd love to hear about that journey, how that happened, and then what the aftermath has been since.
It had in the past, and watching certain influencers and stuff, the stuff that shows up in the algorithms is the stuff that I no longer watch, right? Because it's all hype, it's all trading, it's all, and if you have a question, they don't answer, they don't care. And so I had a Twitter account just to follow along the space, but I had never commented or talked, or we were completely isolated Bitcoiners. I had never met another Bitcoiner in person. I talk about it at work a little bit with clients and stuff if they were interested, but I had never, but as my journey went further and further towards the right direction and understanding Bitcoin, I started following other people. I got more interested in our financial system. I got more interested in the history of investing in finance and following those people. And Ben had really wanted to go, and I was like, no, there's no way, we can't afford it, and then in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, gosh, he's interested, and he's interested for the right reasons. And we happen to live in Florida, so we wouldn't have to fly. I wonder if we could make it work. And I tootled around on the website a little bit and looking at prices, and I was like, oh, there's no way we could do this. And then chatted with someone from the conference website, I think, from Bitcoin Magazine, I guess. And they said that there's a student ticket. Well, there's volunteer options, but the volunteer options would have meant that I would have had to miss more work. And so I was like, can't afford that. And so then they said there was a student ticket. Ooh, I got something in my eye. And so the student ticket, okay, well, that took things down a little bit. And I thought, let me just see, because he was really gung-ho about the GenZ for BTC at that point, and figuring out that he wants to reach out to other kids, and he wants to do it in a format that they understand and make short form video with words that they can understand. He was having a lot of trouble processing. He has a little bit of a processing disorder. So reading and then understanding in sequence and remembering in sequence is harder. So we have to reread things when he was reading the Bitcoin Standard just to get it. So he's more of a visual learner. So I had a lot of belief in him and his idea, but here again, the previous with other influencers and stuff, and them not giving a crap and not necessarily answering the most simplest of questions about, how to do something or how to move something, or you don't know who to trust when you don't know anybody. And Greg was always very down to earth, and I really, he has a personality that's similar to mine, where, the way that some people might think it's unconventional, but like, I don't have time to soften things all the time. So like he swears and stuff, which makes me laugh, and because that's how I am. So my kids hear it more often than I would like, which is, not admittedly the best, but it is what it is. And I thought, because he's always saying for the kids, maybe he would just know whether or not this is a safe environment for kids, because I didn't want Ben to go and talk to people who were younger, who might take advantage of his idea or string him along or offer him something that wasn't realistic and guide him in a wrong direction. And we had never been to a conference, that big at all. So I didn't know what the environment would be like as far as taking a minor. And so, yeah, just one day on Twitter, I sent him a DM and said, hey, can I ask you your opinion of what it would be like to take a minor to the conference, and if that would be okay. I don't want him to have negative influence by influencers or people there, and I'm not sure what to expect. And he just immediately said, sure. And we chatted a little bit, and I told him about Ben's idea and what I was worried about, because we don't know any other Bitcoiners. And he was just like, it's a fabulous idea. And I was worried about, like doxing him or him, he's like, you don't need to have his information, because Ben wanted to have little business cards and, his t-shirts and stuff made. And he was like, it's fantastic. Like, I love the idea. Let me introduce him to some safe, real Bitcoiners. And that's how the journey began. And it just spiraled. And it was a more amazing, probably, experience than he or I will ever have in our lifetime again. Just the amount of access that Ben was given to really good people, really good, solid people. And everybody was very encouraging, and everybody was very friendly. And it was pretty amazing. It was just, right time, right place, right message. There's really no other reason for it.
Well, that was how I met you. Greg introduced me, and I just thought it was so interesting, the journey that you guys had, and he was kind of shepherding both of you around the conference. It was really nice to see.
It was amazing of him to even do that. You know what I mean? And just through that, and him starting to kind of talk about Ben on some of his podcasts and stuff. And he said, go ahead and make him a Twitter. And like, I have no idea that he's talking about Ben and that he is excited to meet him. And I have no idea that he's mentioning that he's excited about his idea, because I'm not, I'm at work. So I don't know that he's mentioning it on podcasts or on spaces. And, his brand new Twitter account is just kind of exploding and blowing up. And we're like, we don't know how to do this, right? So this journey was very fast, and hopefully there'll be some longevity. I'm excited that Ben is kind of growing up in this space with the influences that he has. I think they're all very positive. They're very positive. They're very encouraging, but they all also, you got to do the work. You got to work. So I'm feeling very blessed, that we have this amazing opportunity and journey, and that it set forth a possible future, for him, in a field that he's really, really interested in. That there's a lot of different paths you could take. That was one of the things that I thought would be beneficial in taking him, was seeing that in a conference for any kind of field, you see that there are so many more career paths than what you're told in school, right? Because there's no way to see how big the world is. So like, if you get an engineering degree or a finance degree or a marketing degree, or, there's so many support roles and so many things that branch off of every single thing, that, having a passion towards something can lead to so many different careers I wanted him to see that there's for any field of interest, there's tons of different jobs and careers that are within the same field, but complete different specialties within the field. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was, yeah, it was totally unexpected and amazing. It was really great.
I don't know if are you guys, because I know that you discussed Ben's idea a little bit, but is it something that has been fully fleshed out and evolved, and can Ben talk about it? Is it something that you're open to sharing at this stage?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the goal was for him to make the platform, and he did do like a sample video, which he shared on Twitter, and to get people to understand what his idea was. But he's not a content creator, and he's not a video maker or editor, and he doesn't enjoy sitting at the computer by himself. He's very social, so it's probably not going to be his specialty. But the hope was to get other people who are content creators and who are Bitcoiners in the space that have different specialties within the field that brought them to the field, to all come together and make content based on his idea, where it can all be put on one platform, all these little short videos that can swipe, that kids can see like the whole history of money, where money comes from, what our debt-based system is built on, what fractionalized banking is, and then what Bitcoin is. And they can start and stop and go in 2 or 3 minute increments as they're more interested, and then to have all of them be shareable, so that if there was someone who made content and kind of worked with Ben on it as far as the idea, or making sure that it would be something that a kid would understand, that if they were sharing it on their own platform, they would have their own credit for it. But to have everything like kind of linked back to a place where, should a kid see those things, they can click on something that would lead them to a place where there's safe information. So that was the idea. It wasn't necessarily that he was going to make them all, and he may, I don't know. I just the idea was to have Bitcoiners come together to make his idea for everybody, right? And
Yeah,
since
that
then,
makes
we
sense.
had another idea, which is I'll let him talk about, which is the set-aside sats. He's very passionate about that because of his age, he doesn't have income, and so he can't. He can't, and so he's worried that kids that are in the next 10 years going to be facing, coming out of school and trying to start a career, at what level of debasement will they be at then, and how much things will have gone up in price by then, and what options will they have. It'll look very different than right now because of how quickly it's happening. So I'll let him talk about the set aside sats idea too.
Do you want to, Ben, I'd be interested to know as well, just like what your experience has been, because you've obviously then opened this Twitter account. There's like a ton of followers. You're producing some content. Can you talk about that journey and then how you got to set aside sats?
Yeah, so I got lots of opinions and people telling me to do different things at Bitcoin Miami, as I met so many different people, and I was open to everybody's ideas and everybody's help. So after that, and after I networked a little bit and met a bunch of great people, I wanted to keep getting stuff out on Twitter and keep getting my name out, and then decided to make an example video of what I was telling everybody at Miami, of what I was planning on doing. It was just a little example video I made with my neighbors. So I did that, posted it, and it was pretty cool. I liked it. I think it was pretty good. And then me and my mom thought that it wasn't fair that kids can't buy their own Bitcoin, because there's a common saying that you get Bitcoin when you deserve it, or you get into Bitcoin whenever you deserve it. And I thought, yeah, that makes sense. Then I realized kids and younger adults or teenagers can't buy Bitcoin at their age. And with our money right now, which is going to be much more powerful than it is in the future. So then in the future, when our money is less powerful, you won't be able to buy nearly as much Bitcoin because it's so low. So I thought it'd be cool if people could set aside sats to give to kids or family members in the future that didn't get into it as early because of their age or because of restrictions. And I think, like, I know it's not like a mass scale thing. We can't just start saving up for people in the future, but it's like to put the idea out that kids are going to be the future. And if they're not educated and aren't learning about it and learning how to invest in it early, they could be brought up in the wrong direction and could be brought into trading or whatever happens with all that stuff or altcoins.
What's the thinking about that, Ben? And then how do you think you would structure that? Is that so that people can gift Bitcoin to kids, or would parents have some kind of a Bitcoin saving account that they could open up for their children? Like, how do you sort of see that working, and what do you think would be most beneficial for somebody like you?
Yeah, I think probably the most beneficial thing would be for a Bitcoiner, somebody who knows Bitcoin, to make a wallet named like whatever they want to name it for the person in the future and have a whole wallet and cold storage or where they like to put their Bitcoin to be saved and just then put it in their name, the kid's name, whenever they feel
Mhm.
it's the right time. Like I think about it like rich dad, poor dad. You could be the rich dad of somebody's life and change the way they think while also educating them on Bitcoin and teaching them a bit to help them start their new adult life when they become older, like towards the end of high school or
Yeah, and
beginning stages of college.
it doesn't have to be like somebody that you are related to, right? Like the idea is anybody in the future. And it doesn't have to be a gift. Like if you go to setasideSats.com, you can just make a pledge and then you put in, you know, like how much you're buying off the market, which means you're buying it and keeping it for peer-to-peer use for individuals in the future, and not uh, that it's not able to be purchased by the large institutions and funds that are coming in. So keeping it for the intended individual, and the future peer-to-peer use. And it doesn't have to be for a family member. It could be for anybody. It could be for like,
Yeah.
you know, a waitress that you decide is working really, really hard. And maybe if she's interested in Bitcoin in 5 years, you can, instead of giving her a tip, you know, if you set aside $25 now, what that will be worth in Bitcoin then, and you're going to give her a $25 tip, you could give that to her. And that's like an immediate kind of orange pill. The way Ben would say it is, this is $25, but it's so much more than that because I bought it then, right? And this is your, you know, so it could be earnings too, like you hire a kid or you know, you have a business or you know, you pay the neighbor kid for work that they do. It doesn't have to be like a charity, but the point was to get as much of it off the market to set aside for individuals in the future. So some people would do 1, 2, or 3 or 4 different wallets with small amounts in it now and hold for 10 years or hold for 5 years or till whenever they come across somebody that they think is at the right time in their life to understand, learn about, and have their first Bitcoin. That it's to keep it for individuals.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious, Beth, as well, because mothers generally tend to control the purse strings of the families and tend to focus much more on saving for their kids' futures. And I don't see as big a focus in that space amongst mums who are actually thinking about this for their children and thinking about currency debasement, and thinking about how to protect that wealth and educated about Bitcoin. I feel like you're a huge exception in that space. And I'd be really interested to understand why you think that is, because to me, that market segment is one of the ones that actually should be most focused on Bitcoin and isn't currently.
I think that's something that I want to change, which is why I had, you know, the Moms in Bitcoin Twitter to I think it's just so scary. Like when I go back to thinking, you know, and I was doing okay, but especially as a single mom, you know, it's not smart to waste, right? You have to be very careful about your spending. And so that mindset, and then there's a mindset with technology too, that a lot of times women, if they're not in college and didn't grow up in technology, but they're working, and even women who aren't working, like there's something to be said for women who are have a stable life and they're married and their husband, you know, manages retirement accounts and whatever. Well, you never know what's going to happen. And so I went through that. You never know what's going to happen. And we've had, you know, friends and acquaintances where somebody passes away unexpectedly, or, you know, then all of a sudden you're in control of the whole future. You're in control of, and so making the right decisions with what will work best in the future, and then having some security in that, again, you're in control. And I think for women, that's something that is lacking, that every woman, even if she's not on her own, even if she's particularly well off at the moment, but any woman at any stage, especially a mom, right? They want to know that they have not only like the willpower, but the ability to actually protect their kids' futures. And that's just kind of, I think there needs to be more from that mindset of that you can take control, you can have something of your own that you decide, you know what I mean? Even if it's just $10 a week, right? It's getting off zero and learning. And that, you know, I'm a hairstylist, right? So like I use my computer for booking software, and otherwise I would throw it out the window. Like I don't know how to do PowerPoint and all that other stuff. I'm sure it's really easy for everybody, but I've been doing hair for 20 years. So like I've never had a need to. So the idea of learning this technology is overwhelming, but once you understand why it's important, it's no longer overwhelming, right? Because it's just a matter of sitting down and doing it, and then realizing that, you know, the Bitcoin community is there to help you. So it took me 2 years to like chat or talk or join a spaces, or, you know what I mean? So if we can reach more moms and just get them to realize that they do have some power, right? They don't have to rely on somebody else. They can rely on themselves in this way, and it's an easy thing to do. It's not as hard as what you think, right? It's an easy thing to do.
So I have a question for you in that vein then. I mean, when you say if you can reach them, how do you reach mums? Because if they're not online, they're not spending time on the internet. Like one of my observations about Twitter is that it's very male dominated. Women don't like the platform, they don't spend time on it. And then when I look at services like Instagram, or services, I probably shouldn't call it that, but platforms like Instagram, people tend to use those more for escapism. It's all like following cat videos or things that are like life advice or exercise advice or things like that. So where do you see, because you obviously in your day job, you talk to lots of other women, you're doing hair, you have opportunities to discuss this, but outside of that high touch environment, where do you think that one can reach?
You know, I have some ideas. I mean, obviously, like people on Twitter will laugh, but moms are still on Facebook, you know, in moms communities. It's hard to approach them in a way that you're not selling something. I think most women turn off the moment that you suggest that you can have something more, right? Because they assume that you're selling, you know, some new vitamin or some new facial thing or some new, you know what I mean? And so I think that finding that way in is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I'm going to try a couple things. So I'm going to get back to, but I do know that through children is a good way, right? So, you know, Ben had originally wanted to also connect an app to the GenZ for BTC website that would you know, encourage kids with their parents' permission to, when they earn money for their chores or for Christmas or birthday gifts or whatever, that they can, you know, allocate a certain percentage towards Bitcoin, and that wouldn't be unlocked until they were 18 or older. And in order to do that, you'd have to have the parents' permission. So the parents would have to be kind of cajoled into letting them do that. And then the parents would be forced to also sort of learn. But the other thing is too, we're working with Bitcoin Bay, who's a nonprofit, and getting some volunteer options going. So kids need volunteer hours to get the state scholarships. And so if they can clean up the environment while they're walking and talking with a bunch of Bitcoiners, and they're desperate for these hours, there's not a lot of places, you know, to get them that are convenient. That's another way, is getting kids involved like Ben. So I think that it's like, if we can reach the kids, we can reach the moms, but then we also got to reach the moms in order to reach the kids. And so there's this like balance of letting people know that there are alternatives, and that you know, just being secure that you know that it's okay. I think the more, when people are attracted to people who are steadfast in their principles and their beliefs. And so when you are consistently that way, they kind of come around to wanting to know a little bit more, because they see that you're not afraid. And so reaching women in a way that teaches them that they don't have to be afraid is going to be, I think, how to do it. I'm just not quite sure what vehicle yet, or how many, but I'm going to try. Yeah.
That's great, kicking the tires on it. Ben, I had a question for you as well before we wrap up. Are you familiar with the Mi Primer Bitcoin program from El Salvador, My First Bitcoin? Is that on your radar?
Yes, it is. I have, yeah, I think it is.
Yeah,
Remember
because
hearing about
yeah, it's
it.
interesting because they've done, and Beth, I mean, for you as well, they've basically created like a standardized curriculum, and there's a bunch of kids in El Salvador that have gone through that curriculum
Right.
now, and
Benjamin,
they've got
that's the book that Dahlia worked on.
Oh,
Remember me and Dahlia
that's
and
the
her
one?
son? Yeah. Yep.
Okay, yeah, then yeah, I'm very familiar with that. And
yeah, because the reason I mention it is because I'm a co-founder of Bitcoin Policy UK, and we're working with them to essentially, what we've done is we've made a commitment to use their curriculum to upskill 50 kids in the first 180 days of kind of being part of this program that they're running. So they've got this concept of nodes, like human nodes, being individuals or organizations around the world who've signed this sort of memorandum of understanding, which is not legally binding, but we've basically committed to say we're going to teach this program to 50 kids in the first 180 days. And one of the things that I just think is so interesting when I think about somebody like you, and you really came to my mind with this, that I thought, she's a mother, she's got other friends who are mothers, and they all have kids, and it would be a great opportunity to be able to run like a club for the kids where you use that curriculum to teach them. So then that way, to your point, you know, you're teaching the mums at the same time, you're upskilling the kids, and now when the kids kind of get their diploma, they now understand Bitcoin really well, they're in a really good space, but so do their parents. So I
Right.
just thought that that might be something interesting to look into. I'm happy to chat to you a bit more about that offline, but I just feel
Yeah,
like it really ties in with what you do.
it can. I mean, we have been a little bit isolated, so I have a lot of clients. It's interesting. You have to be really careful, because your clients become your friends and your family, but at the same time, it's still a job and it's a profession. So my younger one went through some rather serious illness in the last couple of years, and that's been really tragic for him, and very trying. And so there was not a lot of socializing at all. Like, there's not, for me, there's not, it was just like survival mode. And I'm feeling very blessed and hopeful that this year is a turning point for him, and that we're coming out of that. But it kept us from being very social and able to go out and do stuff. So I think that I would like to speak to you about that, as far as how to approach other moms, but I don't know that I have like a group that I could, you know what I mean? because I got to toe the line of the being the professional. But I think that I know that Ben would really like to get in front of kids. And so I think kids getting in front of other kids is really important because it teaches them that there are options and that they can go home and talk to their parents, and kids will beat their parents down until they say, okay, here's a little bit, right? Or you can try, or show me what you're talking about. And that's more likely to happen with moms. You know, I think a lot of dads are men in general, their personalities are very strong-willed, and they know what they know. And so this is how we're doing it. And if they have been taught negative things about Bitcoin, they're just going to shut down. Whereas the mom will see the expansion of thinking. The mom will see the responsibility, the sovereignness, right? The mom will see the kid talking about things that are important and not just like, no, we don't do this crap. And so I think that it's going to be important to bring moms in and kids in. I think it's awesome what you're doing. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, well, let's pick that up offline then, because I can
Okay.
share with you a bit more about what we're doing and just see maybe how we can support you in doing something in your community. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask Ben, do you have any last thoughts, anything that you would like to share, anything you'd like the audience to know? And could you also let everybody know, Ben, your handles on Twitter and your website as well? You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, so I'm Ben, GenZ for BTC, trying to do stuff for the kids. And my Twitter is GenZ for BTC. And
Numeric 4, right?
is number numeric, yeah. And my website is, so the set aside sats one is setasidesats.com. No spaces or anything. And then the website for GenZ is GenZ for BTC.com. And my email is yo@GenZ for BTC.
Sorry, that's hilarious. Yo.
Yeah, mom helped with that one.
Right. That's very on brand.
He's a big Jack Mahler's fan, so the yo came naturally, right? So
that's
yeah,
so
if
funny.
anybody can be like a cool kid and move mountains and tech and still be like cool, right? Just Jack. It's gotta be Jack, right? So yeah, the yo came pretty easily.
Awesome. And Beth, what's your Twitter handle so that people can follow you in that space as well?
It's Moms in Bitcoin 1. And I mean, we don't have anything up yet on the Gen for BTC website. It's just, coming soon, because we're trying to figure out the best way to build it and collaborate and, get some help with that, because he's a full-time student and athlete. So, there's really no spare time now that school is starting this week. But just build on the idea of teaching kids in a way they can understand. If you go to his Twitter and scroll down a ways, you'll find his video, and the concept is really very simple, and comparing a glass of grape soda and pouring water in it, as that being the dollar, to show that it's diluting, using terminology that kids understand, that dilution can be the same as debasement, versus Bitcoin being orange soda over time retains its value and taste and color, and that's something that's a real easy concept even for people our age, right? Who just are not taught about. I mean, I didn't learn when he would come out and be like, did you know that our money is, did you know what happens when it goes in? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, why aren't we learning this? And I'm like, I just learned it, in the last couple of years. And it changes your view. It changes how you think. And so it makes it easy. It helps my mother understand. When she saw the video, she's all of a sudden become very positive about Bitcoin, because she sees, right, Oh, so I think it can help anybody, but I don't, the Set Aside Sats is live. SetAsideSats.com is live, but other than that, just Moms in Bitcoin 1 on Twitter is where to find me.
Perfect. Right. Well, thank you. We'll put those all in the show notes. So thank you both so much for your time. You're such an inspiration. You're literally the coolest people ever. And I'm really grateful. I know you're super busy, so I'm so grateful that you've both taken the time to talk to me.
Thank
And
you for your patience, right? We've been going around about this all summer, so I appreciate your patience. And I'm in the car because I'm at work. So yeah.
It was worth it. It was worth it.
Yeah.